Rogue, Anna Marie, Earth-616. The mutant known as Rogue has the uncontrollable ability of absorbing the energy of others through physical contact, temporarily incorporating their abilities, powers, memories and even personality with a touch, a process which wears her victims out. A runaway, Rogue was found and adopted by mutant terrorists Mystique and Destiny. She had her abilities traumatically activated when she shared her first kiss with a boy and put him into a coma. As part of Mystique's Brotherhood of Evil mutants, Rogue accidentally learned through Destiny that the superheroine Ms. Marvel was destined to bring tragedy to their life. Deciding to secretly attack Ms. Marvel, Rogue unexpectedly absorbed her entire persona, permanently keeping not only her flight and super strength powers, but also her psyche. Gravely affected by this experience, Rogue had no choice but to seek help with Mystique's enemy, Professor Charles Xavier, founder and leader of the X-Men. Contrary to other members' disapproval, Xavier took Rogue in as part of the team. Rogue soon proved her worth by becoming one of Xavier's most loyal soldiers by not being afraid of putting herself in danger to protect others. With the X-Men, she found relative peace and even managed to get rid of Ms. Marvel's identity. After a long period with the X-Men, she had different opportunities to lead the team and also to live a normal powerless life. A notable superhero, Rogue was also a member of the Avengers Unity Division, a team designed to improve mutant-human relations, eventually becoming the leader of the team. After getting married to her longtime teammate and lover, Gambit, Rogue started to enjoy options to keep her powers in check. As all mutant kind was invited to live on the mutant nation of Krakoa, Rogue and Gambit found a new home. After a period with the diplomatic mutant team Excalibur, Rogue was elected to rejoin the X-Men, who were reinvented to serve and protect Krakoa and the world. History. Girl on the Run. Anna Marie was born to Priscilla and Owen in a back-to-nature hippie commune in Caldecott County, Mississippi. She was delivered by her Aunt Carrie, her mother's sister. Although the prude Carrie believed Owen had ruined Priscilla's life, she still maintained a relationship with Priscilla and Anna Marie, who frequently visited her in their family's farmhouse. However, after Carrie reprimanded Priscilla for sharing the commune's attempt to use Native American mysticism to reach an ethereal plane known as the Far Banks, the sisters cut ties with each other. The ritual resulted in Priscilla's disappearance. Owen informed Carrie about the incident and left Anna Marie under her care by asking her to move into the commune. In her grief at the loss of her sister, Carrie proved to be a strict and authoritarian guardian. This led Anna Marie to be a rebellious child. Her poor relationship with her rigid aunt and distant father prompted her to run away from home as a kid. Fending for herself as a loner, she was nicknamed by the locals as Rogue, which became the only name she would go by. The skittish Rogue was approached by a warm-hearted Mystique, a mutant shapeshifter. Since Mystique was an outcast herself, Rogue trusted her. Mystique took Rogue in on the advice of her precognitive partner, Destiny. As part of a family, Rogue enjoyed happy moments with her mothers. However, due to Destiny's knowledge about the future, Mystique was secretly aware of Rogue's condition as a mutant and, in fact, had plans for her in her cause as a mutant terrorist. At some point, Rogue grew close to a boy named Cody Robbins. Mystique feared for their relationship, wishing to prevent any development from it. Still, during their flirtation, Rogue impulsively kissed Robbins, at which point her latent mutant power to absorb the life energy and psyche of others with skin-to-skin contact emerged. Cody Robbins was left in a coma from which he would not awaken. Rogue was traumatized by the experience, breaking her spirit to the point of embracing Mystique's mission. Not able to control her absorption powers at first, Rogue usually wore body-concealing clothing that eliminated the possibility of accidental skin contact. Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. One of Destiny's visions predicted that the superheroine Carol Danvers, the mighty Ms. Marvel, would ruin Rogue's life. In order to protect Rogue, Mystique had her Brotherhood of Evil Mutants attack Ms. Marvel with no success, leading to their arrest. Noticing Mystique's fury, Rogue decided to deal with their enemy by herself in secrecy. Learning Ms. Marvel would be in San Francisco, Rogue tackled her, wishing to prove her worth to the eyes of the Brotherhood. During a fight at the Golden Gate Bridge, Rogue's powers interacted with Ms. Marvel in an unexpected way. Rogue absorbed Ms. Marvel's alien-based powers and memories permanently. Rogue gained Ms. Marvel's incredible strength, near invulnerability, the power of flight, but her psyche was fractured in the process, ironically consummating Destiny's prediction. Rogue disposed of the apparently lifeless body of Danvers, who was saved by Spider-Woman. Rogue's loneliness, envy, bitterness, and despair were turned into anger. Wielding Ms. Marvel's abilities, she was ordered to defeat the Avengers, attacking them at their mansion headquarters in order to acquire enough power to break the arrested Brotherhood members free. Rogue was able to incapacitate Captain America and Thor, but was forced to retreat for not being able to subdue Wonder Man with her absorption powers. After regrouping with the Brotherhood at the prison on Rikers Island, Rogue battled the Avengers one more time. The Avengers prevailed, prompting Mystique to escape with Rogue. Danvers was psychically treated by the telepath Professor Charles Xavier of the mutant group known as the X-Men, adversaries to Mystique and the Brotherhood. Unbeknownst to them, Mystique had secretly set base at the Pentagon. When Danvers and the X-Men Storm and Wolverine invaded the Pentagon to delete any intel they had about the X-Men, Rogue was casually seen by her former victim. Danvers immediately unleashed her rage upon her aggressor, but Rogue proved to be a formidable foe, forcing Storm to send her out of the battle site with a cyclone. Soon after, Mystique and Rogue envisioned a plan to free their teammates from the Windest maximum security prison. Impersonating the psychiatrist Dr. Kellogg, Rogue had access to the inmates. They were prevented from overcoming the authorities due to the efforts of the Space Knight ROM, but Rogue, Mystique, and Destiny still managed to run away, resuming their operations as a Sisterhood. The Sisterhood sought revenge on the X-Men and decided that Angel would be an appropriate source of information. However, Angel's ally, the Dazzler, defeated them before they could harm him. This led Rogue to vow revenge on Dazzler, since she had become increasingly jealous of her popular and attractive lifestyle. Going against Mystique, Rogue invaded Dazzler's apartment by herself, but the Heroes for Hire drove her off. Rogue was able to track Dazzler's movements to the dorm room where her sister, Lois London, lived in. Ultimately, Dazzler was able to fend Rogue off alongside the Heroes for Hire after revealing the X-Men were dead, so Rogue's mission was pointless. Rogue still nurtured her envy for the Dazzler and continued her vendetta. Hunting Dazzler down to Los Angeles, Rogue was invested in merely hurting her hated opponent this time. Dazzler ran away to an airfield, where she siphoned the acoustic energy from an aircraft to knock Rogue out. Rogue's life was put at risk due to her being unconscious next to the plane's turbine. Ultimately, Dazzler chose to save her enemy's life. X-Men. Rogue began to suffer more acutely from having Carol Danvers' memories in her head. Desperate, Rogue turned to Professor Charles Xavier and the X-Men, where Binary attacked her on sight. Professor Xavier's charity towards all mutants led him to welcome her into his school for gifted youngsters, regardless of his team having previously fought Rogue, and in spite of the X-Men's own strong disagreements. Professor X psychically examined Rogue and invited her to join the X-Men and live at the mansion, with the team even threatening to leave if she was allowed to stay. Professor Xavier reminded them of their ideals as X-Men and they gave her a chance. With the X-Men, Rogue traveled to Japan to attend the wedding of their team member Wolverine. At first, enraged at seeing Rogue had joined the X-Men, she earned his trust by saving the life of his fiancée while Viper and Silver Samurai poisoned the X-Men and battled him. Over time, Rogue eventually earned the respect of all the X-Men and became a valued, trusted member of the team. After a quick battle with Mastermind, Mystique attempted to rescue Rogue from the X-Men, thinking Professor Xavier forced her to leave the Brotherhood, only to have Rogue tell her that she joined of her own free will. After finding out that Michael Rossi was in danger, Carol's residual personality took over and Rogue attacked a S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier, which prompted Nick Fury to send out an all-points bulletin on her. In an attempt to take Rogue down, Henry Gyrich and Valerie Cooper had Forge create a neutralizing gun, and while Gyrich fired at Rogue, Storm was hit with the gun on maximum setting. As a result, Storm was stripped of all her powers. The X-Men battled the Juggernaut and Nimrod. Rogue absorbed the powers of most of her teammates to defeat Nimrod. When Mojo regressed the X-Men to X-Babies, Rogue was among those de-aged and brainwashed alongside Longshot, Psylocke, Colossus, Shadowcat, Wolverine, Storm, Nightcrawler and Magneto. Ultimately, however, the team was saved by the New Mutants. Dazzler joined the X-Men and fought Juggernaut by herself and was defeated. Rogue led her small team of X-Men to rescue Dazzler and defeat Juggernaut. Rogue was forced to confront and cooperate with Dazzler, a one-time adversary who she attempted to kill. Rogue was approached by Mystique and informed that Destiny had foreseen that the X-Men would die in Dallas. Tracking Storm, the X-Men arrived at Forge's Eagle Plaza, in Dallas, Texas, where they were attacked by the Freedom Force and Rogue was captured. After the initial battle, a rift opened in the sky of Dallas and chaos ensued of different weather patterns right next to each other and beings and creatures from the past appeared and attacked. The X-Men and Freedom Force formed a temporary alliance with each other to save the citizens of Dallas until Colossus decided to enter Eagle Plaza. After gaining access into the Starlight Citadel, the X-Men battled the adversary and, after Rogue absorbed his power and opened a portal to seal him in, gave their lives to imprison the adversary, with a spell cast by Forge. However, the Omniversal Guardian, named Roma, restored the X-Men to life and freed the adversary under the notion that there could be no order without chaos. The events had been broadcast over a live television newsfeed and the world believed the heroes to be dead. After being resurrected, the X-Men decided to use the opportunity to go underground and keep their rebirth secret. The X-Men resurfaced in Australia, where they defeated the Reavers. They claimed their base and teleporter, Gateway, a mutant aborigine with the ability to create gates with his bull roar. Roma appeared and presented them with the Siege Perilous, a gem that created a portal which granted any person who walked through its judgment and a new chance at life, with a new career, home, and so forth, and had magically made them invisible to any sort of mechanical perception. After Madeline went missing, the X-Men battled the Press Gang and Genoshan magistrates, where Rogue and Wolverine were captured and taken to Genosha. While in captivity, Rogue and Wolverine were stripped of their powers by Wipeout and contained where the guards took a few liberties with Rogue. Embarrassed, Rogue allowed the Carol Danvers personality to take over and escaped, rescuing Wolverine. Rogue, still under Danvers' influence, and Wolverine followed Philip Moreau to the Mutates camp until they were attacked and the X-Men arrived to rescue them. At times when Rogue would become unconscious or in extreme stress, Danvers' personality would take over. Rogue and Dazzler formed a tepid friendship, which was tested several times as Rogue envied Dazzler's relationship with teammate Longshot. Rogue even dressed and posed as Dazzler to court the man's attention. Rogue was taken back to the guards of Genosha molesting her and she began to shut up the Carol personality completely. After destroying her room, because the Carol personality remodeled, Dazzler recommended that the women of the X-Men had a social outing. The X-Women went to a mall in Beverly Hills and, after they indulged in a day of shopping and frivolity, rescued Jubilee from the M-Squad. After the Carol personality visited the wall and her old apartment, Rogue reasserted herself just in time to battle Master Mold and Nimrod while wearing Carol's old Ms. Marvel uniform. While battling, Master Mold absorbed Nimrod, killed Senator Kelly's wife, and continued to reconstruct all of the X-Men's damage. Dazzler threw the Siege Perilous at the Master Mold's decapitated head and Rogue sacrificed herself to ensure the Sentinel would go through, and disappeared. Rogue was stripped of her powers for a time, as well as the remaining portions of Carol's personality that had haunted her. Rogue ended up powerless in the Savage Land, where she was taken in by Magneto. Rogue ultimately saw through Magneto's noble facade when he killed the High Priestess Zaladane, who had amassed an army of Savage Land natives, so she left. Rogue traveled to Muir Island, where she fell under the control of the Shadow King. As her powers returned, she and the X-Men defeated the Shadow King, and she rejoined the team. During this conflict, she had her first encounter with the new X-Man called Gambit, while they were both under the Shadow King's influence. The uninhibited and corrupting influence of Farouk led to them making out. When the mind control ended, Gambit remembered their encounter, but Rogue did not, leading to an awkward encounter afterwards. Despite the circumstances of their first meeting, Rogue and Gambit were immediately attracted to each other and quickly began dating. Rogue and Gambit's relationship was often strained, much thanks to her inability to control her absorption power and his dishonesty. Around this time, Cody Robbins, the first person to fall victim to Rogue's powers, passed away after being used as a pawn by Gambit's ex-wife, Belladonna, and ex-lover Kandra. It was eventually discovered that Mystique had two sons, the now-deceased anti-mutant politician Graydon Creed and Rogue's longtime teammate, Nightcrawler. Rogue and Nightcrawler considered themselves to be siblings, although the revelation did not particularly alter their friendship. Attributes. Powers. Rogue is a mutant. Power, life force and memory absorption. Rogue can absorb the powers, energies, memories, knowledge, talents, personality, and physical abilities, whether superhuman or not, of another human being or members of some sentient alien races, through physical contact of her skin with the skin of the other person. She is not limited to absorbing superhuman abilities. For example, she has absorbed the strength, agility, and sharp reflexes of an enhanced human. She can also absorb psionic abilities. In absorbing another person's memories, Rogue also gains the emotional responses connected to them. For the transfer of abilities to be accomplished, Rogue's skin must contact the skin of her victim. Rogue can only absorb abilities and memories from living organic beings. She can possess the powers of several superhuman persons at once. No upper limit has yet been determined for the number of superhuman beings whose power she can maintain simultaneously, or for the amount of power that she can absorb. Rogue can even absorb gross physical characteristics from a victim. Her physical appearance does not change when she absorbs abilities and memories from a normal-looking human being. The victim's abilities and memories are absorbed for a time 60 times longer than the period of time Rogue was in physical contact with that person. Those touched are rendered unconscious by contact with her, though some beings, including Juggernaut and Mojo, have resisted this effect. While for most of her life, her use of this power was involuntary, Rogue gained full control over it due to Xavier purging her barriers in her subconscious. This transfer is usually temporary, lasting for a period of time relative to how long contact is maintained, but the transfer may become permanent in certain cases. For example, she absorbed Ms. Marvel's powers permanently due to unknown reasons. Ms. Marvel's strange mix of human and Kree DNA may have had something to do with it, and she absorbed Sunfire's powers permanently when she absorbed the last of his life force by accident. Most often the process happens instantly when Rogue touches someone, but in certain instances where a being has possessed an extraordinary level of power they are able to resist her, and she may only share part of their memories and power. Her power is potentially lethal. Her flirtation, Cody Robbins, was in a comatose state for roughly a decade after her powers first manifested when they touched. He never fully awakened, and finally passed on instead of remaining on life support. However, Rogue has never actually killed with her powers. Even under the influence of Strain 88, she only sent victims into a permanent vegetative state. As Rogue is absorbing the total psyche of a person, there is a risk of a personality overwhelming her and taking control of her body, including Spiral and Mr. Sinister, who both prove to be the dominant personality. It has also been shown that even though Rogue forgets the memories she has absorbed, when a psyche returns to its body, echoes of their personalities remain buried in her mind. Rogue is able to absorb psyches and abilities of several beings at once, though the experience can be confusing and disorienting for her. Robotic beings are mostly immune to her power. Depending on the number of organics left, she can usually affect cyborgs. She seems able to affect techno-organic beings. Powerful enough beings can withstand her touch and attempt to impose their own will on her or cause a feedback loop. Rogue's power has grown over time. Initially, she was unable to absorb the powers of Wonder Man, a being of living ionic energy. However, now she can absorb him. Although she is capable of absorbing his powers, Colossus in metal form was able to make physical contact with her with no ill effects. However, Rogue has shown the ability to absorb him while he was in metal form at various other times. Power enhancements. Rogue's powers were greatly enhanced by Pandemic via Strain 88, making the effects of her touch instantly permanent and all-consuming. Her powers return to their normal levels after the mutant baby touches her in X-Men Messiah Complex. This also returned her mental status to normal, as the baby purged all previous templates and mental impressions from her being. It appears after the events in X-Men Legacy number 224 that Rogue is now able to voluntarily use her powers, now kissing Gambit and not hurting him or absorbing his powers. This appears to be because, before Professor Xavier helped her break them down, her power had formed many mental walls within her mind every time she used her abilities. As such, her powers were crippled in their development, freezing them in their nascent stage, which severely limited Rogue's control. Yet when she, Gambit and Danger fought Ares in Utopia, her power absorption was still strong enough to weaken Ares to some level for Gambit to give the final blow, hinting that she can finally control her touch to be very deadly for enemies without hurting her friends. She later uses the much more debilitating version of her powers against the Avengers during her fight with the Avengers to defend Jean Grey School from Avengers invasion, even making Falcon and She-Hulk immediately unconscious without any negative feedback on herself, besides the green skin from She-Hulk, stealing their powers and rendering them unconscious for quite a long time, as she stated herself as "so it's time to get old school." A new twist in Rogue's powers consists of prompting her victims of skin-to-skin contact for a consent on the process. Rogue's victim can either resist the absorption and suffer, like originally with Rogue's powers, or instead submit to the absorption, and so the process instead becomes entirely fluid without consequences. Rogue has used this twist extensively in the Legacy series. Just two examples of it are when aiding the victims of a subway collapse absorbing all rescuers' abilities, and also when quenching a riot in a prison of mutants absorbing the existence of some mutant volunteers. Rogue now retains the powers and very essence of Wonder Man, meaning that she can no longer freely touch others with her power. While she originally retained the consciousness of Simon Williams, the master scientist later removed it. Wonder Man's powers. Currently, Rogue seemingly still retains some of Wonder Man's powers and abilities even though he has been released from her body, possibly permanently. Assuming a 1:1 comparison between their two power levels, she may possess the following. Ionic energy form. The tissue and bones of her entire body presumably have now been augmented in strength and to a certain extent. She is now composed of organic matter that is permeated with this form of energy. Superhuman strength, presumably possesses vast superhuman strength, the limits of which aren't known, and she is listed as class 100. Superhuman speed, she can presumably run and move at speeds that are beyond the physical limits of the finest human athletes. Superhuman stamina, her ionic body presumably grants her unlimited stamina and is therefore immune to fatigue. Superhuman durability, her bodily tissues are presumably much harder and far more resistant to physical injury than the bodily tissues of a normal human. Rogue is thus presumably highly resistant to penetration wounds, even from high-caliber machine gun shells. She can also presumably withstand tremendous impact forces, such as falling from great heights or being repeatedly struck by superhumanly strong opponents, without being hurt. She is also presumably resistant to extremes in temperature. Superhuman agility, her agility, balance, and bodily coordination are all presumably enhanced to levels that are beyond the natural physical limits of even the finest human athletes. Superhuman reflexes, Rogue reflexes are presumably similarly enhanced and are superior to those of the finest human athletes. Flight, Rogue is able to fly through the air at great speeds, the exact limit of which isn't known. However, she can presumably now fly at speeds in excess of 700 miles per hour. Immortality, presumably Rogue is now presumably functionally immortal. Because of the ionic energy that empowers her, she presumably no longer ages and is immune to disease and infection. This same energy presumably sustains Rogue's physical vitality far more efficiently than the biochemical process that sustain ordinary human life. As a result, she presumably no longer requires food, water, or oxygen. After her marriage to Remy in place of Kitty and Colossus' aborted wedding, Anna had her powers jump-started again by the daughter of Shariar Empress Lilandra and mutant activist Professor X Xandra via telepathy. She now has the power to leech away both the abilities and life energy of others from a good distance away, eliminating the need to touch enemies to swipe their abilities and memories. Much like her regular abilities, these new powers were beyond her control. Rogue would randomly absorb raw energy from everyone around her with no real means of reining it in. At their most unfocused, the absorption would kill anyone she got too close to, leaving them a withered husk before reducing them to ashes in the wind. With the help of Spiral's Mojo World device taking Anna Marie into her own subconscious, she discovered that she'd been inhibiting control of her own abilities in the back of her mind out of fear. After realizing this, Rogue learned to turn her siphoning abilities, both tactile and remote, on and off at will once again. Abilities. Rogue has displayed acrobatic skills she apparently learned from Gambit while they both recovered from fighting Vargas. Rogue can also speak fluent French, and while on an alien world, proved to be an excellent swordsman, having been taught by her brother Nightcrawler. Rogue's skills also depend on who she has recently absorbed. Rogue could formerly draw upon the combat and espionage training of Carol Danvers by granting control of her body to her alternate personality, a duplicate of Danvers. Paraphernalia. Equipment. Rogue formerly wore a pair of ruby quartz sunglasses to avoid accidentally harming anyone with optic blasts when she absorbed Cyclops' power. Transportation. Formerly XMen Blackbird, Gateway.
If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.